Never a good feeling to drop a big one like this in this manner.
Mitchell, one last attempt, can't bank it in. What an afternoon for the Sydney Kings and Brian Goorj. So much on the line, second versus third, jostling for position. The Sydney Kings now sit second on the table and can call themselves the most informed team in the competition. A dominant second half, and the man you see on screen right now, Kendrick Davis, 30 points.
What a win for the Sydney Kings. Maybe a championship series preview. This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour. I'm Olgun, fresh off attending those games. What a weekend of basketball in Melbourne. No Kane with me this week, but instead I brought in not just the next best, but someone better. We got Ryan Broekhoff, a former Phoenix, and I'm excited, Ryan, to get your take on all of the happenings, not just on the court, but the things that spilled over on the court. But firstly, how are you? Welcome, and I'm glad to have you on the show again.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Yeah, Kane's just too busy for us these days, going here, there, and everywhere, preparing for the NBA All-Star weekend, and his family flew in town. So we'll give him a little bit of a break this week, but it's always great to join the show.
Kane, you get a little bit of grace because your family's here and you have to entertain them while they're in the US. But Ryan, let's get straight into this game because that was the final call. This was a fascinating game because it was back and forth early on, and it felt like a close game. Mm-hmm. There was a bit of dramatics that happened, a bit of theater that happened on the sideline, and then it seemed like it was the Sydney Kings who were able to sort of use that and leverage that into sort of their intensity going forward. It ended up being a 114-88 win. To me, it felt more like a 15-ish point win because the Phoenix were jacking threes at the end of that. But Ryan, 8 straight wins for the Sydney Kings. It is 14 of their last 16. And they have a net rating of about 12.9 at this point in the season. They are far and away the best team and hottest team in the competition. What did you make of this win and of this Sydney Kings team right now?
I really liked the matchup, especially in the first half. It was up and down. It was back and forth. There was lead changes. There was mini runs going on. Not a lot of defense felt like it was being played in that first half. Both teams were able to get up and down and find easy shots and easy baskets. But usually the Phoenix wear down the opposition with their speed and their pressure over the course of the game. But Sydney, as you said, there was a little bit of drama, which I'm sure we'll get to and break down a little bit further. But after that and after halftime, they looked the fresher team. Came out with a lot more energy defensively. I thought they were really strong, limiting Phoenix to like 38% from the field and only 20% from three. And some of that's Phoenix missing shots, but a lot of that is the Sydney pressure defensively and just how versatile they are. They can switch. They can hard hedge screens. They're great at rotation. They've got athletes that are long and can move around and cover space. So defensively, they were good. And then on the other side, Phoenix couldn't keep Sydney out of the paint the whole night. Kendrick Davis getting in there, getting Xavier Cooks involved, who I believe didn't even miss a shot for the game. Just their ability to break down. Daly was playing bully ball, getting into the paint. They just continued to use Phoenix's aggressiveness on the defensive end against them and kept attacking, kept finding easy baskets, and eventually the damn walls broke.
Yeah, 68 points in the paint. Xavier Cooks was 8 of 8 from the field. He had 20 points. Kendrick Davis had 30 points and 9 assists, strengthening his case for MVP. It still seems like a tight race, but Kendrick Davis is doing everything he can to try and win that award. But I want to talk more on the Kings, but you mentioned the Phoenix and the pressure they play with, and they have in spurts been a really, really good defensive team. But I feel like of late especially, a lot of teams are learning how to leverage their pressure into scores on the other end. And we've seen it both times against the Sydney Kings in the last 2 games they've played, where the Kings dropped 115 some odd points in the game they played last time, 114 points tonight, and it's the last time. And it seems like the Kings especially, they play so fast and they have so many guys who can carry and grab and go that this Phoenix defense, it might not be the perfect thing for them to put forward against this Sydney Kings team the way they're constructed.
Yeah, the pressure was there, I think, more so in the first half. But even after score, Sydney got the ball out of the net so quickly and kick aheads, and they were attacking, when it's 3-on-3, 2-on-2, and using some of those advantages at the wing with their athleticism to be able to get into the paint and get easy buckets. So Phoenix would start building momentum, make a few shots, and then give up a cheap dunk down the other end. And it kind of kills the momentum and the confidence on that defensive end. And we know the Phoenix are going to be relentless in their full court pressure, trying to turn the ball over, trying to speed up the game. And most teams, as I said, sort of get worn out and it leads to turnovers or quick shots. But Sydney just looked so balanced going against that pressure. They didn't look rushed. They didn't look like they were forcing shots. There weren't quick shots that Phoenix could then rebound, run back at you, get up, their threes in transition, which has been their calling card. They still get up a bunch of threes, don't get me wrong. Phoenix are not going to shy away from shooting, but they weren't able to kind of string defensive possessions together, quick shots, outlet, run, kind of build the scoreboard pressure as well, the defensive pressure. And as you said, Sydney are built to withstand some of this pressure. They got ball handlers across the court. You got Daly, who I think was the best plus minus in the game, that when things do get hot or things get out of control, you can say, all right, Daly, just settle us down. Let's get us a good shot. Let's use your experience and get other guys involved. And they seem to just have the wood over the Phoenix right at the moment, and there may have to be some adjustments defensively in how they attack. And I thought Kendrick Davis, Phoenix are switching a lot of stuff in their half-court defense, and any pick and roll, they're getting Foxwell off. I thought Foxwell was an instigator and trying to, get under the skin of Kendrick Davis. That had some success early on, but when you're switching all the time, you lose a little bit of that pressure, and Kendrick Davis' foot speed against, the other Phoenix defenders was just too much.
No, the Sydney Kings moved to second on the ladder. They're 21-9. We'll speak about their run home and the run home of some of these teams a little bit later, but I think they're probably in pole position to ultimately get that top spot once the season's done. This Kings team, they're number one offensive rating, number one defensive rating. They're the hottest team in the league right now. And this game wasn't just an awesome matchup between two of the best teams in the league. I think the two best teams in the league. There was also some spiciness, and it was on the court, and then it bled off the court in the post game. But let's listen to what Brian Goorj and Josh King had to say after the game, and then we'll talk about some of the instances on the court.
That was another aspect to this. Something said to you, I'm going to say something back. They want to give me a technical, they can give me a technical. But he tells me what he said, I'm coming right back at him. I didn't think there was a place for that. I wasn't talking to the referee. He didn't do anything when he went at me. And I don't just go at a player. I went there and he said something, and I went back at him.
I do know what I saw back in the locker room, and it's very disappointing. A guy that everybody looks up to in this league, and I'm not trying to make headlines, but Coach Goorj telling one of our players F you 3 times in a row is just uncalled for. It's really surprising. A guy that's done everything he's done in his career to think it's okay to tell an opposing player F you 3 times. That's very disappointing, and it's not right.
All right, so it was around the midway point of the second quarter. The first incident, I think it's important to note, was Owen Foxwell draws an offensive foul on Kendrick Davis. Now, Foxwell was playing up and in on Davis, as he should, as a lot of teams will, and he drew an offensive foul. Now, in the aftermath of that, in the sort of argy-bargy, there were claims of Kendrick Davis kicking Owen Foxwell. Now, when you look at the vision in real time and then the replays, I don't think it's an unreasonable claim, but that is a claim that the Phoenix made, and I think they still make. That then led into the next possession where Kendrick Davis is on the break. A hard foul is committed. There is sort of a face-to-face between Davis and Nathan Sobey. Both pick up a tech. As the ball sort of goes to the sideline and the ball's about to be inbounded, we see this exchange, which is what everyone's talking about, between Brian Goorj, Sydney head coach, and Owen Foxwell. And what we hear is Brian Goorj saying F you 3 times, and he calls Owen Foxwell the B word. Now, what we're told by many Sydney people is that Owen Foxwell said something along the lines of, to the effect of, shut up and sit down. Now, I will stress that Foxwell and the Phoenix strongly deny this. They deny that he said that. What they're saying is that Foxwell was basically pleading his case that Kendrick Davis should have been thrown out of the game because of the alleged kick earlier. So that's important to note. Obviously, we get to those press conferences where Goorj stands by his behavior, and Josh King says it was disappointing and uncalled for, Goorj's behavior. But on first glance, seeing the incident, what went through your head first? You've been a teammate of Foxy.
I have, and I have nothing but respect for Foxy and love the way he goes about it. And that's his job on the defensive end, is to get up and in and try and, rattle offensive players and get after the best offensive player of the team and try and shake them a little bit. And had mixed success in that first half, but the incident kind of is what it is. You get tangled up, you fall down, could Kendrick Davis have found a different way to step over Foxy, or to not, nudge him with his leg? Whether it's, considered a full kick or not, it's up to your own interpretation. There was definitely some minor force to it that, went into Foxy's back. Whether it was worth getting ejected, I don't know. I kind of like some of the physical stuff and seeing competitive and emotional play. Was it probably a little over the line? Maybe. But the interaction with Goorj and Foxy, I really didn't have any problems, except for, I guess, the B word. I think the B word, becomes more of a personal sort of thing, and it probably crossed the line. The other language is fine. I think that's just normal part of basketball. If you go to a basketball game, you sit courtside, you're on the bench. There's going to be back and forth between players on the bench, players on the court, players and officials, and players and coaches. And coaches and coaches. So it is a little bit about, the game, just what it is. Goorj is obviously mic'd up. Foxwell isn't. We're never going to actually hear exactly what was said, but I got no problem with the back and forth. I got no problem with Goorj standing up for his team and standing up for his best player. And it sort of did galvanize the Sydney Kings heading into the break. It was a back and forth game. Obviously, Goorj would have done the big, it's everyone against us at halftime. We're on the road. Stand behind Kendrick. We believe you're our guy. And in the second half, they just completely took over and looked like they're a more aggressive team. Whereas, I was slightly disappointed in Phoenix and just how they handled the situation immediately. Guys sort of ran in, but there was it didn't look like they had Foxwell's back as much as I thought they would have. If you see someone, being kicked in the back or shoved with a foot in the back, you would expect a little bit more of a response. Sobey obviously had the tough foul, but even that wasn't, it was tough, but it was fine. There was nothing dirty or aggressive really about it. So I just thought Phoenix would have had a bigger response to that, to see, one of your young star players that means a lot to this team sort of being attacked by a coach, being, caught up in a physical altercation with an opposition player. But at the same time, we saw what happened in the Adelaide-Brisbane game, and I'm sure there would have been some stuff come down from the NBL about, this is definitely not acceptable. But I would have liked to see Phoenix just have the back of Foxwell a little bit more and stand up for their young player, and some of those leaders sort of get in between Foxwell and Davis.
Yeah, it seemed like the Phoenix lacked a bit of juice and pop throughout the game. And then obviously after the Goorj Foxy situation, it was the Kings who then sort of used that and leveraged that into more intense play. I will say that there is a chance we hear the audio. I don't know if I don't think we will, but I know the NBL has sort of started investigating the situation. Now, that is also common practice. That is standard practice. They investigate every sort of incident that happens. I'm with you as well. All of the FUs, while again, they're very grating, they don't really do much for me. That doesn't offend me at all. The B word is something that I thought was a little bit over the line. Now, and of course, I appreciate the intent of what Goorj was doing, and I agree with it. I think every coach would do that. That this is, especially with the way Goorj is and the way this Kings team is, they will rally around their coach, rallying around them. That's just necessarily how these guys get up and about. So I think the intent was right. I think the execution was a little bit off. I think the B word is a little bit over the top, and I think Goorj, I've known Goorj for a little bit. I think he would regret using that. I think he would change his words. I also have no issues with Josh King standing up for his player in a press conference. He's going to agree with Goorj. Like, yes, of course, Fox. No, absolutely not. He has to go and protect his player, and what he saw, he felt was uncalled for. Now, there was an incident that happened after the press conference. So I was front and center in the press conference. I asked a lot of the questions, and then afterward, there was a situation, and this is sort of public now, so it's not too revealing, but Derek Rucker was also in the press conference. He was in there because I was in a hotel near where he lives, and I was driving him home. So he was hanging around for me, unfortunately. And he sort of stepped out mid-press conference, I believe, to make a phone call. And he heard Josh King take issue with what Goorj said. And I believe in the situation of him walking out into the hallway of John Cain Arena, Kendrick Davis went by him. Rucker would have said something to the effect of, hey, like, Josh just sort of went at Goorj just for the situation. And then I think when Josh King left the press conference room, Kendrick and Josh King got into a very spirited discussion and debate. And it was effectively Kendrick saying, hey, like, don't go at my coach. Josh saying, hey, I got to protect my player. So there was a little bit of back and forth between those two, and it was largely respectful, and then they went their separate ways. But there was that little incident. I think that's much ado about nothing. I don't think that's worth investigating or anything like that. It was spirited, but it was relatively mild. I'll also say that I have a feeling, Ryan, that this incident will blow over quicker than it usually would because of Foxwell's demeanor and because of the way he took this situation, which was he took it in stride, right? He was laughing through it. He didn't make it a huge deal. He could have, when the alleged kick happened, he could have reacted and held his back or held his stomach. He didn't do that. When Goorj swore at him, he could have thrown his arms up, but he didn't do that. So I give credit to Foxwell for the way he handled himself in this situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Foxwell's that kind of guy. It's stuff. Some stuff happens on the court. You leave it on the court. You're competing. You're going at it. It means a lot to these players. There's emotions that go into it. But Foxwell's really level-headed for a young guy and more mature than his years suggest. But it was a big moment. It was a big hoorah. And really, I think a lot of it was about nothing. So Foxwell has no problem with it. I'm sure the Phoenix will want some please explains about the Kendrick Davis trip kick sort of incident and why there was nothing more to it or looked at longer than what it was. But just one of those incidents in basketball. There's emotion. There's love of the game. Two competitive teams that, hey, if we get a series in the playoffs in the finals with these two teams, I'm sure we're going to see plenty of back and forth and plenty of chit chat.
All right, I want to end this on a quote from Josh King. He said, our defense was trash, our offense was trash, I was trash, our performance was trash. We'll be better. I know we will. I'm confident in that because we've got high-level guys in that locker room. Bad day to have a bad performance. Let's get better. So in saying that, this race for the number one spot, or at least to make the top two, is really heating up. And this game was a result of this game. And right now we have Adelaide, Sydney, Southeast Melbourne in the 1, 2, and 3 spots. Don't count out the Perth Wildcats, who are sitting at 19 and 11. They have one more loss than the team in third place. So they're right there. But Ryan, when I look at some of these runs home, the Sydney Kings, they have 3 games left. It's at Illawarra, then Perth at home, and then at Brisbane. There is a chance they run the table with that. The Perth game will be tricky, but at Illawarra, at Brisbane, feel like scheduled wins. You have Adelaide, who have New Zealand at home, and then finish the season at Perth. It's a difficult stretch to end the season, of course, at Perth. And then the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix have Tasmania at home, and then they finish with a throwdown at Melbourne. But when you look at those runs home, and Perth has Brisbane at home, then they're at Sydney, and then Adelaide at home. So that's a tricky schedule too. Brisbane easy, and then 2 tough ones. When you look at that, who do you think ultimately ends up in that top spot? Who runs the table?
I think it probably stays the way it is. Perth is sort of the dark horse within this championship race and being one of the form competitions in the second half of the season that are kind of going under the radar a little bit. We're talking about the Phoenix and Adelaide and their ups and downs. United have just unexplainably just dropped off, and Phoenix obviously pushing for the top spot, and Perth just kind of staying right there, staying around, playing much better now, seem to have found rhythm and their rotations and what it kind of looks like going forward. And I would expect it to stay the same in the top 2, whether that flip-flops, I don't know. The games for Adelaide and Sydney versus Perth are definitely the danger games in their schedule. You expect, Sydney Illawarra is always an interesting one. Even, when Illawarra has been struggling this season, it's always kind of been a competitive game. The rivalry is definitely there. So I wouldn't count out Illawarra, and they're holding on to the slimmest glimmer of hope to make the 6. I don't think they will. I think Tassie's sort of in pole position there and probably locked it up. But, I expect Adelaide to beat New Zealand. The trip to Perth will be tough. So I think those two, Phoenix against Tassie and United, we know what those throwdowns are like. It's always a different atmosphere to finish that against a United team that would be desperate to go into the final series or the play-in series with some confidence, with some, rhythm in their game. So that would be a really tough contested game, I think. And Tassie, you just never know what you're going to get with Tassie. Doesn't matter how many players they're down. Scott Roth always has them playing tough, and we saw what they did to a below average Brisbane team blowing them out, and Nick Marshall and his performance. So they find ways to get wins. They find ways to always compete. I expect it to probably go, if you have to put me on the spot, Sydney, Adelaide, Phoenix. I think maybe Sydney run the table. Perth may get Adelaide with just their run of form, and the Phoenix, have the one loss, I guess, behind those two teams right now, and that last couple of games for them will be tricky. So that's how I see it. Look, we know the NBL that it changes week to week. Anyone can beat anyone. I think it makes it for an exciting run home, and Perth find a way to beat both teams and run the table home. Don't count them out.
Yeah, so a few things on the Illawarra situation. They are functionally out of the playoffs. They're not mathematically out, but they've got games. It's a tough schedule too. It's Sydney at home and then at Melbourne, at Tasmania, and by my math, they would need to win all those games by about 80 points each.
Okay.
So that's where the percentage has come in, and that's why if you're a team early in the season, try not to drop games by heaps. The percentage will come into effect with the top teams too, where if the Sydney Kings run the rest, if they've got 3 games left at Illawarra, Perth, and then at Brisbane, if they win all 3 games, then they are the number 1 team because their percentage is far and away better than what Adelaide's is. It'll be tricky. It feels like Sydney will get that top spot, or will still hover within that top 2, and then it's between the 36ers and the Phoenix. The Perth Wildcats are funny. You mentioned them, and it's I'm trying to figure out like the way we're treating them. It's because without David Duke Jr. and just without their point guard, they just feel incomplete. But they've won 8 of 9 or 9 of 10. So they're in a really hot stretch of basketball. Christian Doolittle is playing all NBL first team basketball. So it's really fascinating that this sort of streak they're on. But look, and then Melbourne's one of those other teams where it's sort of the inverse to Perth, which is they're not doing very well, but there's some level of trust in them still. Or it's very difficult for that trust to completely go away because they're Melbourne United, right? And I wonder if that trust will ever dissipate until they're knocked out or until they win it all. But it does feel like Sydney, Adelaide, Southeast. What the ladder is right now, I think it'll just be Sydney and Adelaide flipping. But man, this run home is unbelievably fun. And the other thing to watch, Ryan, is Perth, Melbourne percentage. They're separated by about 0.3. So Perth goes into Brisbane. They're going to try and run them off the floor. They're going to try and win by 50. Melbourne has Cairns, one of their bogey teams over the last few seasons. They need to win that game by a lot too. So have you been in a situation where percentage has had a significant impact on where your team sits on the ladder?
Not that I can think of personally, but it feels like every year in the NBL, there's always these scenarios come the end of the season after a long season that, determines. I think it was one year United missed out on the top 6 by percentage because DJ hit a 3. Yeah, I think DJ hit a 3 or something to kind of knock them out.
DJ missed a corner 2, and if he hit that against Perth, then Melbourne United would have made the play-in. Yep. And I think they would have won the championship too. They were a really good team at the back end of the season. But Ryan, 1 bucket.
I know. So look, it adds a lot of intrigue to it that percentage plays a part even after 33 long games in a regular season. So look, each matchup, each game, coaches stress this at the beginning of the season, as you said, with Illawarra, losing games early and losing badly comes back to really bite you. And each game is important. Each game means something. You play it out to the final whistle. And, it's going to be a fun run home. Fun couple of last rounds. And then, obviously, we got the Ignite Cup final to finish it off with New Zealand and Adelaide, which should be a lot of fun too. And we've got to see, players line their pockets with a little bit more money.
Look, we got Ignite Cup final with this run home. The MVP race is still hotly contested. So end of the NBL season, we're going to the penultimate round. It's going to be fun. Let's pivot to the NBA with Statmate Streak Watch, where this week it's Josh Green, my fellow Sydney sider. Now, he is part of this Charlotte Hornets team that is clicking on all cylinders. He was a plus 18 versus the Rockets. That was their 8th straight win. They're up to 9 straight wins, which is a franchise record. But Josh Green playing unbelievably good basketball right now, always being that really awesome ancillary player, that 3-and-D guy. In this stretch of 9 straight wins, Green is shooting 58.8% from 3. So he's playing his role to perfection, and the plus minuses are showing his impact on the Hornets winning streak.
Yeah, look, it is a player that the stats, as you look at it, are not going to jump out and wow you, but his impact on winning can't be denied. We saw this a couple of seasons ago when he was a big part of that rotation of the Mavs team that went to the NBA Finals. Now, a lot's happened with that Mavs team, and Josh is no longer there, and half the team's kind of gone. But his ability on the defensive end, how flexible he is to guard multiple positions, get up the court, cause some, discomfort for ball handlers. He's, if you're lazy with the ball, he picks it off and he runs it right back at you. And on the offensive end, just filling that role, spotting up, shooting threes. If he gets closed out too hard, he's a great straight line driver, being able to finish or create for others. He just fills that role and what he's asked to as good as anybody. And we've spoken a lot about the Hornets, probably more so than what we have in probably years, but on the obviously Nothing But Net shows where we've been hyping up. And look, the Charlotte Hornets have been, I guess, the surprise team even for a team under 500 still, but their last 9 games, they're 5th in defensive rating, number 1 in offensive rating, number 2 in net rating, and a team that we thought was going to be, in a rebuild. And how does Josh fit in this early in the season? I was thinking, Josh would be a perfect player to get traded at the deadline to go to a contender, someone, who needs some wing depth, someone who's going to play the role, someone with experience in the playoffs and had success in the playoffs, which is Josh to a T. But this Hornets team's turned it around, and Josh is a key part of that.
Maybe the Hornets turn into that contender. I don't know if they'll be a contender, but maybe they turn into that good team that needs that sort of do-it-all wing like Josh Green. And look, they're up to 10th in the East. And teams around them are tanking. And so there's potential room for the Hornets to sort of creep up, and Josh Green, in a really cool way, is a big part of it. Download StatMate now to play more or less, and you could win $1,000. Let's go on to the other sort of NBA story, which was maybe one of the coolest Australian NBA stories in recent times, and that's Jock Landale. Now, gets traded at the deadline to the Utah Jazz. And the situation goes as follows. He's on the plane, about to take off to Utah, gets a call, get off the damn plane. I don't know how it worked. I don't know if he said, "Captain, turn this thing around." I don't know if it was that dramatic, but he got off the plane because he was traded to the Atlanta Hawks. And so he decided, all right, I have a decision to make. Do I stay the night, fly in tomorrow, and then figure it out? Or do I drive to Atlanta, 5-6 hour drive, get a good night's rest in, get a workout in the morning, and play the game that evening, coincidentally, against the Utah Jazz? He chose the latter. He chose to drive. And Ryan, he put up 26 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks, the dagger 3, and the win. Tied career high in points, new career high in 3-pointers made with 5. I don't know if the situation, that 40 hours, could have gone any better for Jock Landale.
And Utah probably kicking themselves after seeing that too and his performance. But what a performance it was, and to be thrust into the starting lineup with probably just a quick shoot around to try and figure out, what are we doing? What's our offense? What do you need from me? How are we guarding this? How are we doing this on the offensive end? Am I rolling? Am I popping? There's so much that goes into the game of basketball on a night-to-night basis, and the tactics and the plays and familiarity and comfortability with teammates. And I guess is lucky having Dyson there just to kind of help, and a familiar face and someone that he can turn to and probably ask a million questions on that 5-hour drive. Was calling him up, what are we doing? And, what are some of our calls? And having someone like that must have really made the transition a little bit easier. But what a first up performance. He had 6 offensive rebounds. He seemed to just be everywhere at the start of the game. And really, put his best foot forward. I was absolutely shocked that they didn't start in the second game with Okongwu coming back from his injury. But look, I think he's carved out a nice role. He's having, his breakout season in the NBA after, a few different stops and, up and down opportunity over that period of time. But look, they must be very happy. They were obviously sent out Porzingis, so there was a need, and Jock has just been able to fill that, gives them versatility offensively, being able to stretch the floor, shoot the three, defensively, hustles, gets a rebounds, play smart. And we've seen him for the Boomers for years and years, just his competitiveness, but his ability to connect on the offensive end, connect defensively, talk, be a leader of the team. And as he gets more comfortable, we'll see a lot more of that. But for a debut, you can't ask it too much. And as you said, I don't know how he got off the plane, because usually once you get on the plane, you're on the plane, and it must have been, hey, I've got an emergency. I need to get off this thing, sort of. But yeah, went home, said goodbye to the family, drove, and had, maybe his career game so far.
It's really awesome. I think the crowd getting around him, I think, just added to the moment. It was really cool. They seemed to, in one 48-minute game, he became a cult hero in Atlanta. And I thought that was awesome. In hindsight, I don't think the Utah Jazz would have wanted to keep him, because I don't think they're trying to win games these days. So I feel like Jock Landale is someone who's probably going to help you win games. You speak about him being connective, right? He's averaging practically career highs across the board, but him being a connective big is made even more dangerous because of the ability to shoot the ball now. And again, he had 5 3-pointers in that game. Look, he's up to just under 40% from 3 on 3 attempts a game. So this is on volume, and this is a real thing. And we are an Australian podcast, so I can't help but think of what that sort of spacing will do when he's on a floor at a World Cup, at an Olympics, as a starting center, alongside Giddey and Dyson and whomever else is on that floor. I think add the shooting, and I think some of the, I don't want to say it, the Bogut-esque passing that we're seeing glimpses of, he's turning into like a really awesome, complete player. Hey,
yeah, he is, and I think some of that passing has been there. It just hasn't been involved enough in the offense to really show it. So, look, having a season like this and playing competitively night in, night out will only help him when he does come back and play for us with the Boomers. So, the shooting, look, I remember playing against Jock. It was the semifinal series my first year with the Phoenix, and I think we were playing in Sydney because of all the COVID stuff, and we're up.
You guys were up like 15, 18.
Yeah,
I was at this game.
We were up by a bunch and thinking, all right, we're on the way to our championship. It was game 3, and Jock's ability to stretch the floor and make shots from outside really changed that game and changed the course of that series. And it's always been there. The adjustment to the three-point line takes a little bit of time for everyone, and confidence is a big thing. When you're getting up a 3-pointer a night or something like that, and you have a bad couple of weeks because you're not playing a lot and you're barely getting any shots, it hurts the shooting percentages. But now with his increased opportunity, his involvement in the offense, you know what he does in that high. When he's playing up high, playing dribble handoff game, pick and roll, he's great in the short roll. He's got a nice little floater. He can find the corner if need be, but the ability to pick and pop and shoot confident. And Atlanta are not a team that telling players, not to take these shots or not to take that. They're a free, open offense. Everyone's, allowed to play their role and shoot open shots and shoot good shots. And Jock doesn't take any bad ones. So when you take good shots, you get more opportunity and you're confident and feel good in yourself. You're going to have shooting nights like he had, and we'll continue to see that growth over, this season and culminated in that game.
And the hope is that the Hawks can sort of get their stuff together and maybe go on a little run now, and hopefully Jock can be part of a winning team heading into the play-in or playoffs. Last thing I want to talk about, this is something that you wanted to bring up, which is Nick Marshall's huge game. You spoke about the crowdless game you were a part of. The crowd in Tasmania was getting around Nick Marshall. He was the stat line's incredible. It's 31 points, obviously a career high in the NBL for Nick Marshall. 12 of 13 from the field. He was 7 of 8 from 3, and the 3 he missed was a open transition 3. but this was an incredible performance, albeit against a Brisbane Bullets team that is unfortunately the embarrassment of the NBL right now. But all the credit in the world to Nick Marshall for the way he's been able to grow and develop over the years, and it's almost culminated in this, which then sort of thrusts him into the most improved conversation. Now, I dropped a story on .com.au a couple of days ago on how I see the race, but I didn't have Nick Marshall in it because I think there are other guys who have improved a lot. But what's your case for Nick Marshall, and especially off that 31-point game? What's the case for him as the most improved player?
Oh, look, I think, as your article suggested, there are a lot of worthy winners this year. Foxwell, Flynn Cameron's been fantastic. Sam Menenga has just gone to a completely another level. But I guess Nick Marshall, I've just really loved seeing his impact on the court throughout the entire season. You're not I guess, the focal point of the offense for the majority of the season. But his impact on winning has been, I think, enormous, and kind of discarded from Adelaide, ends up in Tassie, and Scott Roth just puts in part of the system that whenever players go there, they seem to find a new lease on their basketball careers. They find confidence. He plays, Scott Roth's offense is everyone's involved. Everyone has the opportunity to score and have the ball in hands and find shots. And he's just sort of relished in that role. And, he had the game winner against Adelaide. I've loved some of his defensive performances. He had a really good battle with Bryce Cotton to try and limit him in a game as well. So it's both ends of the court. I mean, it's a big jump. He's averaging over 10 points, up from 4.5 last year. So the numbers, I think, do justice to it a little bit, to at least be mentioned with the other guys. But I think it's just the growth in his game and the confidence and his impact on a Tassie team that has been up and down and battling injuries and lost, half of their starting five, well, three of their best probably five players, and have really struggled just to find consistency. He's been a stable force for them. He finds plays during the game to score, to get offensive rebounds at opportune times when they need a bucket, when they need some sort of energy play. Defensively, I think it's just given them some versatility with Drimmick, who's, had some issues with his own health and back and being able to stay on the court as that, 3-and-D kind of player. So he's just fit the role. And I just thought the 31 point explosion and the efficiency of shooting it was just a little cherry on top for his season, which has been fantastic up to this point. And the other guys are probably more deserving for, probably what they've put up statistically and where they've kind of been this season. I think Flynn Cameron's been, incredible and very underrated for the Adelaide team and his role and what he brings. But Sam Menenga's another one, but does his injury play into effect? He has played 26 games, but he was in my eyes should be getting all NBL type votes with how he was. It just, New Zealand team that sort of struggled and didn't live up to expectations and found ways to lose games that they probably should have won. But look, I really like Nick Marshall's season. We've always seen the potential, always seen the ability, just sometimes opportunity and finding the right place, which he seems to have found in Tassie.
Yeah, I wonder we just received. So I'm on the panel of voters for the NBL award. So we basically pick the nominees and they get sent out to the coaches, assistant coaches, captains. There's 5 of us on this panel, and I'm wondering the most improved player. I have Flynn Cameron. Sam Menenga absolutely has a good shout. Owen Foxwell. Do you think Owen Foxwell gets Goorj's vote anymore? Do you think that's a thing?
Look, I think Goorj loves it. I think he would actually be like, all right, this young fella's coming at me and we'll go back and forth. But yeah, Owen Foxwell, I mean, you're never going to hear me say a bad word about Owen Foxwell. I love the way he plays, love what he brings in the starting lineup, the intensity on both ends of the floor. And just everyone knows he's going to his left hand, but continues to find a way to get into the paint and cause problems. But I love Foxy.
I don't think many people would say a bad word about Foxy, except for Goorj in that single moment. But I would say that Foxy is the exact kind of point guard that Goorj would want on his teams. And I like your point about players going to Scott Roth and that this Jack Jumpers team and getting a new lease on life or a new lease on their career. I think of Matt Kenyon, who went over there. Roth made him a starter, and now he's a fortified NBL player. Isaac White was almost out of the league, had to be a DP. Now he's a player on the number one team in the league. Ruben Tarangi couldn't find a job. Majuk Deng wasn't able to find a job. He went there, and he was one of the heroes in their championship series. In the championship, they won. So I appreciate everything that Scott Roth does for these guys who seemingly out the league, and he's able to revive them. I don't think Nick Marshall is going to be the most improved player, but he is at the very least a very, very improved player. She's shooting 44% from three on 2.9 attempts a game, and I think if they're going to make any noise in a play-in and potentially further, obviously they're very, very undermanned. Someone like Nick Marshall is going to have to step up out of necessity. And I think he's shown the capacity to do that in stretches. Can he do it consistently? We'll see. Is that the next step in his development? Is that a next year thing or the year after thing? We will see. But Nick Marshall, ton of credit to you. And Ryan, credit to you for joining me. I appreciate all of your insight. I said this last time that when you were on that we need to get you on more. And we'll have a conversation with Fatessa, our producer, when we're done here. But we've got to figure out how to get 3 boxes on this screen and get you involved more on the show, because I really appreciate your insight when we do this stuff.
Always a pleasure. And anytime you guys need me, I'm always here. But look, the NBL and Australians worldwide for basketball, it's just exploding at the moment. So love watching it, love what the players are doing, love what the league and the NBL and how exciting it's going to be for the last couple of rounds and heading into the finals.
This is ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour. If you like the show, rate, review, subscribe, all that jazz on whatever podcast app you're listening to this to. Leave us a comment on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Kane loves to head down the comments and reply to people. So make sure you engage. And if you have any thoughts, queries, questions about our podcast, go ahead and throw it to us. This is ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour. That's Ryan. I'm Olgun. We'll see you next week.